Hey, hey, hey! Evergreen Horror Gamer is here, and welcome to another episode of Terran 101. We're gonna jump into stage 2 of the training maps to learn a bit more about basic, or actually more advanced units of Terran. Let's get to it. So this time the speed will be slightly faster than previously on stage 1, and we'll have a way of building something else than basic marines and marauders. Okay, so we are right off starting by binding our command center to number 4 and start producing some SCVs. Now previously you've seen that I'm moving my SCV to the ramp and I'm building my supply depot there. The reason is because I can form a wall so that my opponents cannot rush up to my base, and since I can lower these supply depots anytime, I can freely move out with my army. So this is a fairly common tactics to use. Okay, so what are we doing right now is trying to focus on our builds. Currently we are not scouting. Scouting is another concept that we'll explore later. Let's start off with our barracks. Yet again, I'm building as close as possible to the wall or to the ramp to form this wall. Whoever comes here, I can set up some ranged units behind them and then just shoot them freely. Okay, now we are starting off building a refinery to be able to produce some gas. Why? Because we'd like to build some more advanced units and they usually require some gas. So we are waiting for our barracks to complete because orbital center upgrade requires barracks. Okay, never stop producing SCVs, especially in the early game. As soon as our refinery is done, we're gonna mine some gas and continuing producing units. Now if you did it correctly, when the barracks finishes, your SCV is done and then you can upgrade to an orbital command. So with this SCV we can move to build a new base, and now we are, since I started mining our gas, we have just 50 gas to produce a Reaper. A Reaper is basically a scout unit, a very fast marine-like unit. So right now we are expanding, creating our second base really fast so we can stack up on production. So far so good. We're gonna call down some mules and continue building SCVs. So what we wanna do with this Reaper is actually scouting. Okay, we should build a factory soon, which is the next building that we are capable of creating. For that you need to use the advanced structures, which is the V key binding, and build a so-called factory. So factory allows us to build mechanical units. We have found our enemies, so we do a bit of microing. A specialty of the Reaper is that it can jump up and down on cliffs. Fairly useful indeed. So we are supply blocked right now, but our orbital centers or command center should be done fairly soon. In the meanwhile we are building a reactor so we can speed up future production. Let's complete this wall with this supply depot so we have full defense against our opponents. A specialty of Terran that they can repair their buildings, and actually SCVs can repair each other as well. Okay, so we start mine from our second gas so that we are able to build some more advanced units. Okay, let's check out. So for now we cannot build any flying units in this particular tutorial. We are adding another barracks so that we can further increase our production. Okay. See that I just moved the SCV past the wall and then I'm raising the wall again. Okay, so now we are producing a bunch of SCVs, which is cool, but let's check this factory. So in the factory, actually check barracks first, okay? So barracks got some new units. We used to have Marine, Reaper and Marauder. As we now seen, Reaper is this really fast unit that can move around, not so strong, but perfect of running inside your opponent base, just like this, checking what they have, like this Roach Warren and Spawning Pool, checking their units, running around, checking if they have expanded or not yet, and then getting away. This is called scouting, basically. It's very useful because this way you can expect what your opponent wants to use against you. After that we have Ghost, which is a technical unit, usually used in the late game. They have a bunch of abilities, fairly strong, but they are quite squishy as well. And they require, beside the tech lab, add them a Ghost Academy, which is a fairly advanced structure as well. Now let's get, in the meanwhile we should, well, just to be safe, produce some Marines. Okay, so what about the factory? In factory we can build a couple of things. Let's build some just to showcase them for you. So the basic thing is called a Helion, and beside that you can build a Widow Mine without any add-ons, without the tech lab. Well, that's not entirely true, but okay. So Helion is a fast car with a flamethrower. Their specialty is that they do damage in a line. So for example, if you have a bunch of this and you would go to their mineral line and attack like this, you would attack all workers in a single line. Fairly good, but they are quite squishy as well, usually used for early offenses. Beside that we have the Widow Mine. So this Widow Mine is slightly more complicated unit. It's a mechanical unit like this. It cannot attack on its own, but what it can do, it can burrow. So it can come anywhere. You can press E and it will burrow. And this range, so first of all, it's undetectable. I mean, it's hidden until it fires. And if anything comes into this range, it will attack and deal a huge amount of damage in a splash. Fairly good against a lot of small units. Also, it deals more damage against shielded targets, which are in general the Protoss units. So to be fair, it's only the Protoss units. Okay, what else we can do? Well, for now nothing, so let's build a tech lab add-on on this building. So we can start building something more advanced. In the meanwhile, as we did in the previous game, we are researching some of our upgrades. Now, talking about upgrades, each race has a certain building, usually one or two different, in which you can do basic unit upgrades. So now I'm gonna build two of these for Terran. These are called the engineering base. So if you have different buildings bound on the same hotkey, then you can press tab in order to cycle between them. So now we are in the factory and we have unlocked two additional units that we can build. One of them is this. Check this out, splash, bam. Yeah, that hurts. Now it's getting revealed because it has already fired, and this is why the wall is pretty good, right? We basically hold everything. They cannot even touch. Well, sure, they are ranged, so they deal some damage, but not that much. Okay, so let's build the next two possible units as well, starting with the siege tank. In the meanwhile, we gotta see this engineering base. Here we have a bunch of upgrades. E and A are infantry upgrades, weapons and armors, and the rest is some building armor upgrade and some range upgrade for certain defensive buildings. While the bottom options, usually used in the late game, general unit upgrades, should be upgrade it as soon as possible, especially if you are going for a heavy infantry composition like I am doing right now, since I'm just building a bunch of marines. So each of these upgrades approximately increases the strength of your units by 15%, and you can stack them up 3 times, so obviously they cost much more as you progress in the upgrade, but they will appear on the units. So here you see it's level 0 and it will turn 1, 2 and 3 as you upgrade. In the meanwhile, we have created the siege tank. So siege tanks, what they do, they're fairly okay speeded. They deal nice damage. They are armored and mechanical, so they don't get benefits from infantry upgrades. But what they can do is they can siege if you press E, which will result in this huge circle around them. So if any unit comes into this circle on which you have vision, the siege tank will do something like this. Yes, exactly. That's damage. That's damage, right? So it deals splash damage and it destroys like the main target like surely dies. No, not surely, but like if it attacks something like this, definitely it will. So what I can show with this cyclone, it's the lock-in ability like this. So until you are in range, well, I sadly ran out of range, but as long as you are in range, it will deal pretty good damage to anything single target unit. It's effective against, well, units which has enough HP to survive this barrage of damage. Yeah. Okay, so our research is well on the way. So what we can build in this situation is an armory. Why do we need an armory? Because first of all, you unlock additional units like Hellbat and Thor in the factory, and for your next level of upgrades you need to have an armory built. Okay, we can use some scan to check our enemies. Okay, they are not doing so much. This is hydraulics then, so from now on they can build hydraulics as well. Obviously our production is not that great since I'm talking more than actually focusing on the game, but it's okay for now. We are building some supplies depots as we are building a bunch of army. So see, this is grayed out. We cannot improve further our upgrades because we lack armory as a building. So now we are doing it, right? Which is cool. We don't need any more gas right now, so I'm not building refineries because like I'm really slow in the game, so it doesn't matter that much. And as we upgrade or finished our armory, we now have access to our second set of upgrades. On the units you can see we have Terran infantry armor and then the upgraded rifles. Don't forget the combat shields rather. Okay, here in tech labs you can use to research upgrades, but based on the building the tech lab is attached to, well, give you access to different kind of upgrades. You can increase your Helion's damage. You can, I believe, yeah, increase the damage of your lock-on with your Cyclone, which is this little car, and it does something like, well, I cannot target friendly units. Okay, fine. What else? We can research the drilling claws, fairly useful upgrade. So your widow mines, the one which I showed you here, which dealt that huge splash damage, no longer will be revealed while it's reloading its ammunition. And the last one is Mars servos, which for all of these transforming units, like should have a Helion somewhere. Yep. So since we have an armory, so Hellion and Hellbats are essentially the same units, they can just transfer between each. So right now my Helium became something much slower, but much more tanky. And still deals splash damage just like this. Obviously it doesn't deal splash damage for to my own units. Yeah. These servos reduces the speed of how Can you see that? Like how my tanks deal this splash damage? Look at that. I can siege this tank up as well. Yeah, and it's just a massacre. Exactly. So for example, Thor as well can switch between different modes. These can be improved with the servos. So what is Thor? Thor is a fairly sluggish unit, has a bunch of HP, not so good against small units, but pretty good against big flying units or a swarm of flying units as well, as it deals splash damage in the air. Okay, we can upgrade in armory as well, but these upgrades are for vehicles and ships. So if we would play on stage 3, here we could see a ship weapons upgrade as well. Okay, let's start upgrade number 3. And what? Well, I don't really want to build any more units. I don't believe it's necessary. So what we are doing is we're basically just selecting our army, put it on control 1, and then we are good to go. Okay, let's move here first, always with attack move, because if we find something on the way, we don't want to lose all of our armies. Let's close this door and continue our production. So what fairly useful things. Let's say we have an idle SCV like this, right? What we can do is use F1 to select our idle SCV. But what if we have 2? Then we can use Ctrl F1 to select all of our idle SCVs and send them back to work. Okay, so we have our armies. We scan before our fight, and what we do is we are sieging up our tanks. This is a fairly common tactic. So now we have the range to attack them, and they have to come into our fire. Okay, another useful thing is called the stim, which we upgraded on the marines. Checked how they will attack faster and move faster, just like this. See, they move much faster, they attack much faster, but they take some damage. That's the drawback of the stim, but if it's used properly, it can increase your damage output a lot. Another tactic to use tanks is you click right click, then Shift E, which will result in them making it to their destination and then sieging up. Fairly useful to efficiently control your tanks. From now on, basically, we just massacrating our opponents. We have completed some tanks upgrade, so they deal even more damage. Our units upgrade are on their way. We are taking all of our marines, stimming again. So stim only lasts a few seconds, I believe 10 or 15 seconds or something like that. So we move up to this base and then the computer surrenders. So that was Terran stage 2 with the upgraded with unit upgrades, factory, mechanical units, tanks, and basically how to use them. So after you finish a game like this, you should always go to the score screen and a bit analyze your performance. So what you can see here is, yeah, this doesn't really matter, like your XP and achievements. This is fun, but it won't help you become better. You can go to the performance tab and you can receive a bunch of useful information. So for example, like what was your average unspent resources? So this, like 6,000, is a lot. Your goal is to always use all the resources you mine. Why? Because why do you mine a resource if you don't produce out of it, right? You should be able to produce units, you should be able to attack your opponent and kill them. 6,000 unspent resources was just a waste for me. The second really important stat is time you are supply capped. So I've been supply capped for more than a minute, which means I wasn't able to produce any more new units for more than a minute. You should always improve on this. You should memorize the times that you hit these supply caps and remember to build additional supply depots. Workers created is a nice stat as well, but usually this is influenced by the fact like how many of your workers have been killed by your opponent. As I said, you should aim for 60-ish workers, as you would like to produce or harvest out of 3 bases at least. And lastly, you can see your APM, which is action per minute. Well, that is like how many actions you're giving to your units. Now 50 is fairly small. Like an average player, I believe, during gold or something league, they usually play around like 100 APM, but the pros can play up to like 400 or 500 APM, which means action per minute yet again. And playing a 30-minute games in 400 APM is like a huge achievement for them. What else we can see? Yeah, some scores, some units, doesn't matter that much. You can check your build order, and if you face someone who is like who was strong against you and you would like to copy his build or something, then you can check their build order as well. You can also analyze your graphs, how did you perform compared to your opponent, and then you can watch your replays. Yeah, basically that's it for stage 2, and stay tuned for stage 3.